Hello, and welcome. Now, in today's interview, I am going to be talking about how to forgive someone who has hurt you with my friend, the amazing Dr. Gladys Ato of drgladysato.com. And this is a lady of many talents. She wears a lot of different hats. So she is a clinical psychologist. She's also a leadership and growth expert. She's a speaker and also the author of The Good Goodbye, which basically shows you how to navigate change and loss in life, love, and work. All right. Now, actually, before I carry on, just in case you've never met me, we're unfamiliar, I'm just going to quickly introduce myself, okay? So, my name is Nina Dafe, and I'm the founder and the editor of the FarAboveRubiesCollection.com, where I help amazing women just like yourself to know their worth, their power, and their purpose so that they can speak up, step out, and shine as the wonderful women of God that He ordained them to be. And if that's something that basically sounds right up your street, right up your alley, your cup of tea, let's see how many other Londonisms I can squeeze in. Then definitely consider subscribing, okay? Now, what I'm going to do now is basically do like an official introduction to Gladys, but I want you to stick around because after that, by the end of this video, you're going to know what a good goodbye is and exactly how you can have one. You're also going to know kind of the importance of forgiving, not just from kind of the traditional spiritual Christian perspective, but actually having practical steps about how to do that. And the other thing that we're going to talk about is the importance of self-love, self-care, compassion, and forgiveness. Because as we talk about in the interview, we can be very good sometimes at extending forgiveness to others, perhaps also accepting forgiveness from God, but not necessarily so great at actually thinking about ourselves and being very kind and forgiving towards ourselves, okay? And there's so much more as well. Like Gladys is literally a wealth of wisdom and experience. So definitely stay tuned because we're going to be jumping into all of that goodness after this quick intro, okay? So, Dr. Gladys Ato is a clinical psychologist, leadership and personal growth expert, speaker, and author of the book The Good Goodbye, How to Navigate Change and Loss in Life, Love, and Work. She champions individuals and organizations to thrive through change and reach their full potential. Her website, Bridging Consciousness, was founded in 2016 and in less than a year was named one of the top 50 consciousness websites in the world. Dr. Ato was recognized as a Latina leader by Hispanic Executive Magazine, a Woman Worth Watching winner by Profiles in Diversity Journal, and has been featured on NPR, The Unmistakable Creative podcast, NBC News, Thrive Global, The Thought Catalog, Elephant Journal, and also other publications. Today, she works with clients through private mentoring, online courses, and speaking engagements. You can find her strolling the streets of San Francisco with her pup Lovebug, hunting for estate sale treasures, nourishing her passion for style, and also satisfying her foodie palate. If you visit her online, you'll receive your free 30-page workbook, The Good Goodbye Blueprint, your roadmap to thriving after a change or loss at www.drgladysato.com. So without any further ado, stay tuned. We're going to go straight into the interview. Enjoy. Hi, Gladys. How are you?
I'm well, Nina. Good to see you again.
And you. And once again, thank you so much for kind of being here with me. I was going to say tonight, this evening, but I know it's kind of afternoon for you, right?
Whatever time of the day it is.
Yeah. So I've already introduced you, but just for those, watching in your own words, if you could just explain to everyone kind of who you are and the amazingness that you do.
Aww. So I'm Dr. Gladys Ato, and I am a clinical psychologist who turned executive leader into higher education, and then a couple of years ago started a business called Bridging Consciousness. And a big vision for Bridging Consciousness is that it's going to be a publishing house that will support the tomorrow's generation of leaders and spirituality and personal development and wellness, and that this will be a hub for them to be able to showcase their amazing work for the world. And in the midst of that, I needed to start creating my own first steps around that. So I am also an author of my book called The Good Goodbye: How to Navigate Change and Loss in Life, Love, and Work. So this was a labor of love of 1.5 years, and just recently published it in October of 2017. So very thrilled for that, and looking forward to making my big vision a reality.
Yes. And how did, I guess, the vision kind of come about? What are the steps that led you down this path?
Yeah, so it wasn't very strategic on my end, but it was kind of a little bit of both. As a psychologist, I know that part of what I am here to bring to the world is healing. So I've been clear about that even when I was a teenager. Before I knew I was going to be a psychologist, I just knew that healing was something that I was going to be doing in terms of service.
Sure.
And yet therapy itself did not appeal to me as a long-term option. So I became very interested in how do I continue to bring healing to people, but do it in a bigger way where it's not one-on-one necessarily. And when I stepped into higher education as a professor at first, I now had a classroom full of eager students wanting to learn, right? I could work with, 25, 30 students, 40 students at a time. But then as I started to move up in leadership, now I was impacting audiences of hundreds. And that's where I realized that my gifts and what I'm here to do is a lot more large scale. And because I had such great privilege to have these leadership roles at such an early age, I really developed a very strong strategic mindset. I'm extremely organized when it comes to looking at systems and how do I create systems that run efficiently, that allow everybody to contribute their best. And community and collaboration is so important for me to just personally feel fulfilled. So Bridging Consciousness was more a matter of how do I take all my gifts that I've been blessed with throughout my career
and kind of put them all together.
Have massive impact that will have the ability to be global, where I'm collaborating with shining stars of tomorrow and really helping amplify their message. And that knowing that I'm doing my part to help bring healing to humanity.
That is amazing. And then The Good Goodbye, how does that tie into everything as well?
Yeah, so the seed of the book actually came through a loss that I had in 2003 when my mom suddenly died of a brain aneurysm. So it was at her funeral that I had the blessing of what I call a good goodbye. And it's not a new term that I came up with. The term has been coined previously. But it was a way that I understood what I experienced, which was to really find myself feeling the celebration and love and joy of her passing at the same time that I was feeling the devastating grief of having lost my own mom. And I, as a psychologist, I had really looked to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grieving model to understand my own grieving process or guide my clients through their own losses. And what I experienced at the funeral was completely opposite. It was, you work through these stages of denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. And at the funeral, I found that acceptance was the gift that my mother gave me. So I started with acceptance and then worked my way through all these different layers of making sense of the joy that I felt in losing her and the deep, deep sorrow of never having her here again. And so that seed really for me started to make me wonder, like, well, how do I show up for goodbyes? Like loss can happen at any moment.
Yes.
When you lose somebody in your life without warning, one day she was here in San Francisco with me, the next day she was gone.
Wow.
It does shift your perspective and you realize just how fleeting life really is.
Absolutely.
So that had a big impact on shaping my adult life. I was 28 when she died. And so now heading into my 30s, I had really needed to look at how I was coping with goodbyes and realize that I wasn't doing well with change. I would grip on really tightly. I would feel really resentful if things didn't go the way that I had planned. I was very confusing. And that was bringing more suffering to me, because when I would lose relationships, whether it was friendships or a love relationship or even a job, there was so much anger that I would have. And that anger would get shoved down, and I just, on top, I would act like I didn't care.
Right.
And that was my way of coping, which was not healthy. So personally, that experience with my mother allowed me to start looking at change and loss differently for myself, and led me to try to then find the good in any loss.
Yes.
Professionally, amazingly, I was going through a parallel process where I ended up in situations where I was having to manage pretty large-scale crises, dealing with a lot of change professionally and the organizations that I was with, and shepherding them through big changes. And so in it too, I got a chance to actually use my personal philosophy professionally.
Right, and kind of put it into practice for people.
Totally. Yeah. So it got to the point where I was then confident enough that I had enough wisdom and experience, and also just research and knowledge and observation to be able to put it all into a book and share it with other people.
Amazing. And so for those who might be wondering, what is a good goodbye? What does that look like?
Yeah. I wish there was one standard answer to that, because I really believe that for every person it's going to be a little different. But what I hope to get across in the book is that a good goodbye is an experience of the full spectrum of grieving, where on one end you have the grief and the devastation and the sadness or the sorrow, maybe even anger. But on the other end, you have celebration and joy and gratitude and forgiveness and acceptance. And in the book, I talk about, the pendulum swinging from one end to the other, which is a natural way of moving through any loss or change. You're not going to get to one end and stay there only. You need to experience the entire spectrum.
Yes.
At some point in experiencing both ends of that spectrum, you will find that balance, whatever balance it is for you personally, which is going to be different for you than it is for me.
Sure.
But the good goodbye really comes when you can see both extremes and find the story that is going to carry you forward in the most empowered way possible.
I think as someone who kind of, obviously has read the book and gone through and everything, when you were talking about what you were like before with loss, so, maybe holding on and, could get quite angry, and so I really, really identified with that. I still say I'm better now, but I would still hold my hands up and say I am kind of a self-confessed control freak. And like literally my friends are always kind of teasing me and laughing at me, and Nina usually has a plan for the plan, so literally in my younger days, if things didn't go well, and that was literally whether it was like relationships, friendships, plans for jobs, whatever it was, in whatever kind of capacity I was feeling lost. I would do the same thing, where you talked about kind of either suppressing things, but then what I tended to find was eventually it would bubble up, and it was usually at the most inappropriate moments. And quite possibly to the wrong person. But there you go. That's what happens when you kind of add pressure to things.
Connect one way or another, right?
Right, and it always does. And it's so funny because you think, this whole thing of faking it before you make it, you can do such a good job sometimes of faking it that actually you do think you're okay. You genuinely do believe, until, I don't know, suddenly something triggers you.
Yeah.
and you suddenly realize, actually, no, I'm not. And I find what I found was, you know, whether it was a year or a month, you then have to go right back to that place anyway to work through in order to go forward again. So to have a book that can actually teach you a method of handling it right there and then in the moment, rather than having to, like, to use the same kind of phrasing of pendulum swinging, but in an unhealthy way, you know,
Yeah.
to avoid that and actually just be able to work through it and go through, but in the more healthy way, is just amazing to me. It really, really is.
Thank you.
So how can people do that? Can you give us maybe a bit of a snippet about how people can, like you say, kind of hold, you know, the grief, but also the acceptance and the gratitude together and make it, I don't know, bridge that? What is the process?
So, you know, the one thing that I wanted to get across in my book is that there isn't one cookie cutter approach for folks, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so I think one thing that happened when we learned about the Kubler-Ross model, the 5 stages of grieving, is that people are really looking for a framework to hold on to. And so they interpreted it very literally, which is what we do as humans, right? We
Yeah.
hear something and we're like, okay, we need to do it very specifically or else I'm going
Yeah.
to. And people assumed that you had to start with denial and then you move to anger, or now I'm in the 3rd stage, now I'm
Right.
until you get to this last stage of acceptance. And what I've done in my book is, number one, I don't use the word steps. I use pillars, because I want people to understand that this isn't a linear process,
Right.
nor the 5 stages of grieving. That was a misinterpretation of Kubler-Ross's model. It was not meant to be linear.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, she had to correct that, you know, that this was
Ah.
not her intention, that you go from stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can go through any of them.
Right.
And so I hope that people that read my book got that message across. I've tried to really help people understand that your process is unique. And if you are going to look at it linearly, if you are going to interpret this as steps, what I would want you to start with, if you're going to start anywhere, it is with acceptance. And what I've done is reframed what acceptance means. So acceptance, we tend to think means it's all done, it's complete, I've healed, I've let go, you know, that I have no attachment to it, everything's finished. And this is not what acceptance is in the regard to my framework. Acceptance merely is recognizing what's in front of you without judging it or trying to change it. So when you can acknowledge what is in front of you, if you've had a loss, for example, or you maybe it's a divorce, or if your partner says, I want out of this relationship, rather than denying what's in front of you, like, I don't want to hear it, I can talk about it, no, it's, holy crap, okay, this is in front of me. It's happening.
Yes.
Right? Just that statement, it's happening, is acceptance.
Yeah.
Right? And that doesn't mean you agree with it. It doesn't mean you're not going to go through your loss and grief around it. It just means that you're able to see it. And that is such an important step that we overlook, because what's required is presence. Being present with what's happening right here, right now. And by just looking at it, you are not imposing the past on it, nor trying to predict the future. So now that we're in this space of the present moment, facing what is happening, whatever that loss or change is, now we can start to say, okay, well, how do I feel about it? How is this affecting me? Right? And that requires self-awareness.
Yeah.
So part of what I talk about in the book is, you know, how do you tap into your own emotions around this? What are the thoughts that go through your mind as your body starts responding to the stress of losing whatever you were attached to?
Right.
And this is the next pillar, which is called understanding. So understanding really is an exploration of your own process of responding to whatever has changed. And in understanding, when you've accepted that something has changed, you can then start to reflect. And that reflection process is where you can then figure out where you're at, but then also figure out where you want to be.
Right.
And now we've got some markers, right? We've got some guideposts for us. In order to get from where I am to where I want to be, we have to find a way to be able to move through that process. And what helps tremendously with that is feeling a sense of gratitude. So with gratitude, it's a big jump, to go from acceptance, understanding to gratitude. But what I wanted people to get across with the gratitude is that there are lessons here, that if we can find self-compassion, if we can be present with our experience enough to understand that we're hurting or that we're sad or we're angry or whatever feelings are coming up, we can appreciate that awareness and appreciate that what's happening has some big opportunities to help us heal.
Right.
And that can then produce the gratitude, which is almost kind of like the grease in the squeaky wheel. It allows you to start to flow through the experience with a little bit more.
Yeah.
And gratitude can then take us to a next pillar, which is forgiveness. And forgiveness is a huge one that we really struggle with, especially when things don't go the way we wanted.
Yes.
Right. But through forgiveness, you find more compassion, you find more understanding, more acceptance, more gratitude. So it does weave back and forth. And then the final fifth pillar is saying the actual goodbye. So sometimes this process can be very internal, right? But to actually have a moment where you physically, emotionally, mentally acknowledge the loss and ritualistically honor it as a rite of passage. You're able to release it and let it go. And that's where you are also making an intention to let the universe co-create with you.
Absolutely.
So it's not all going to be planned out exactly the way you want, but you've put your intention out there and now you surrender into letting life happen.
Yes.
That you've at least let go of that need to hold on and control and make sure that it's your way. You are co-creating in a way that leaves it open to whatever's meant to happen next for you.
I think there are a few things from what you said that I really kind of made mental notes on as you were speaking. And I think the first one was this whole idea of, okay, I've accepted, so yes, now I'm healed, everything's okay. I do think sometimes, I do think sometimes it's just as humans, but especially like the people that I speak to are mostly like Christian women. And I do find within Christian circles, we do talk a lot about, healing from the past and, becoming better as people and things like that. And I find sometimes that there can be guilt. For example, if, people, might feel healed today on a Monday, but then actually on Tuesday, something else might come up that then brings them back to a place of anger or grief or bitterness or whatever the case may be. I find sometimes that people can have this maybe internal battle where it's like, oh my gosh, I thought I was healed, I thought I was okay, and now I'm back in this place. And I really love the fact that actually your framework, your pillars allows room for that because it's not linear, you're what you were able to then say is that's going to happen because you're human and life happens and sometimes things trigger, sometimes memories, sometimes people pee you off again, it happens. But all you do is then you just work through those frameworks again. You just work through the stages again, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking to somebody this morning who was sharing her own goodbye story. And she said that was so pivotal was that she felt that she's always saying goodbye. Right. And she basically said, it's like a lunch. There's always another layer to work through. And that's why for me, it can be damaging when we think that grieving is a linear process because it's not. And I mean, for example, my mom, I lost her, it'll be 14 years tomorrow is her death anniversary, November 7th. And that, for me, it's every year that I revisit her death anniversary. There's something new that shows up in the grieving process. And it doesn't mean that you're stuck, that the pain death is intense. But you might go some years where you feel like, oh, it's good and I can celebrate and honor her, and you feel lighter about it, where there are other years where it might hit you as though it just happened the day before. And if you can stay open to that and compassionate and still be intentional in trying to understand the experience, that's where I think there is a way that you can navigate situations like that with more ease, because you're using your mind and your intellect, which wants to control and know and predict.
Yeah.
You're using it in service of your heart's desires. And it's less about protecting you from a threat, because now what you are afraid would happen happened.
Yes.
So the threat's gone. Now it's about, how do I take care of myself in the midst of that?
Right.
And I feel like the layers that we give ourselves permission to go through, it relieves us of a lot of that guilt of needing to figure it out and then be done with it.
Yeah. And I think that's the other thing as well, isn't it? I think sometimes we can be so good at extending grace and forgiveness to other people, but really not so great at being compassionate with ourselves. And self-compassion is huge. And I think sometimes we actually don't realize how huge, I guess, a part of our healing, our wellness, our, all of that, our wholesomeness, it actually is.
Yeah. I so agree with you. It's for me, it took a lot of years of dedicated personal growth work. So after my mom died, and I'm a clinical psychologist, so I went to school to learn how to provide this support for other people, to learn how to develop their own self-compassion, self-love. But I came from a place where I didn't have self-love myself.
Right.
And before my mom died, it was very hard for myself just growing up as a little girl and adolescence and early adulthood. My self-esteem was so poor and my self-worth was like this much that it really affected how I was living my life. And then when my mom died, it was this catalyst to go to therapy and start learning how to do the healing work. So, I was with a therapist, I think for 8 years, I think, after my mom died. And then I saw a healer for 6 more years after that. And it's just my own commitment to myself, that I know that personal development and self-awareness are my 2 biggest drivers in life. So I invest in making sure that I'm constantly able to be in an environment where I can look at myself very deeply, understand myself. And then from there is where I get my power, to know, love myself in the way that I do now, having come from a place of no self-love. Compassion is the way to get there. Self-compassion. And it makes you that much more available to bring that compassion to the world.
Absolutely. And what about kind of doing it the other way? Because obviously we're talking about self-compassion, grace, maybe even forgiving ourselves. Because I think sometimes, in the loss of whether it's a relationship, a friendship, whatever the situation may be, we can blame ourselves. So that's where I think the self-compassion can come in that sense as well. But what about those who might feel, I don't know, wronged by another person or, kind of hurt in that kind of way? What are some of, I guess, the practical ways that we can go about forgiveness?
When you're wronged by somebody else, there's so many areas that you're working through around feeling like your trust has been broken. Feeling that your expectations maybe around what that person, who that person was or how they would be showing up in your life, those dreams have now shattered. Right? And then you're dealing with the hurt itself of whatever happened that you were impacted by. And in the book, there's a story of a woman who actually lost her brother. So he was killed. And the need for retribution that is so common when there's an injustice like that, it would have been very easy for her to go to that place. And instead, through the grace of God or whatever it was within her that led her to be this way, she didn't feel compelled to get revenge or retribution, but rather wanted to understand social justice, wanted to understand, how do you heal communities where violence like this is rampant. And for her, she took a step towards education and she decided to go to college. And this is actually where I met her. I was one of her professors. So, I think, how do you start to forgive somebody that has wronged you? A big part of that is, number one, acknowledge that they hurt you. And that's acceptance,
Yeah.
right? Accept that the hurt happened. It
Mm.
doesn't mean you're condoning it. It doesn't mean you agree with it. It doesn't mean you don't have feelings about it. It means
Yes.
it happened. You
Mm.
were hurt. Someone wronged you.
Mm.
When you can accept that, you release your mind from trying to replay those scenarios of they should have done this and they shouldn't have done that,
Yeah.
and they had. Now you've freed yourself up from that, and you can start to move through some of the other layers. And with a lot of forgiveness research that's out there that I did for my book, and then some of the key components that I focused in, it really is being present with what has hurt you and allowing
Mm.
yourself to feel that sense of sorrow, anger, whatever it is, without any judgment as possible towards yourself.
Right.
And then allowing yourself to try to extend that compassion towards the other individual. And
Mm.
there are some practical ways that I have found, both in my career as a psychologist and therapist, and then also through different people that I interviewed for the book.
Right.
A big way to do that is really to look at writing down your experience. So there is forgiveness rituals that you can go through that include writing a letter to the other person on how they've wronged you.
Mm-hmm.
It does require a lot of personal awareness on what do you need in terms of boundaries to feel safe moving forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think we believe that if we forgive someone, we're saying, you can hurt me again. I'm opening
Right.
myself back up to you. It's okay what you did. I'm wiping my hands.
Right.
You're free from it. And that's not forgiveness at all. Forgiveness means that you are choosing to no longer carry the burden of that resentment in order to try to change what already happened.
Yes.
So you're freeing yourself up to move forward, having learned from what happened, setting good boundaries to continue to take care of yourself, but also releasing you and that person from being energetically tied in a way that is hurting you.
Yes, I remember there was a few years ago where I went through just like a series of kind of breakups with friends, and these were I call them like my foundational friends. Like these were people that literally I went to secondary school with. We've been friends for a really, really long time, and you know, for one reason or another, we just kind of drifted apart. But these were definitely people that you know, when you talk about like kind of the shattered dreams, like these are people that I would have, you know, saw at my wedding or, you know, with kids when I had them. So I remember kind of at the time just really not only kind of feeling, you know, like a bitterness towards them, but I think like a real anger towards myself almost, because, you know, I don't know, just by being vulnerable to them, like maybe I'd allowed it to happen, or, you know, whatever the case may be. But I think one of the things that I definitely realized is exactly what you were saying about boundaries, that actually whereas I think I spent a lot of time kind of wagging my finger at them, you know, within my mind and blaming them, I had to look at myself and think about, well, actually, what did I allow? You know, and also going forward, how can I obviously not, you know, make sure it doesn't happen again, because you can't necessarily predict, you know, future relationships and stuff, but as far as possible, how can I make sure that actually, like you said, there are those boundaries kind of being set, and I think it's all about protection, isn't it? It's just about whereas people would kind of say, like you said, you know, you forgive and you forget, which usually kind of implies, like you said, you just open up the people, you know, the door to people again. Actually, it's okay maybe to, you know, have people, depending on the situation, a little bit more of a distance, or actually to walk away, or, you know, I feel sometimes that I don't know, we can tie ourselves to certain situations all in the name of forgiveness and trying to be the bigger person. And actually it's not healthy, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's interesting how convoluted our definition is of forgiveness.
Right.
Depending on what your background is, you know, your upbringing, what you subscribe to in terms of belief system, all that influence, you know, or your society where you live, all of that influences what you're taught about what forgiveness means. But it does it behooves all of us to look at that definition and see if that's actually helping us or hindering us. And forgiveness is something that when you practice it more and more, it actually becomes, I wish there was a different word for easier, because easier doesn't imply that you don't struggle, but I think there's more fluidity to it. And you don't struggle as much to grant people forgiveness, because you do get to that place of realizing that when you forgive, it does not mean you've condoned. It doesn't mean you're giving up your self-protection. It also doesn't mean that you have to close yourself up and surround yourself with steel. But rather, you can stand in your own truth and know when you've been wronged, because you understand who you are, and be compassionate in how you respond to being wronged towards yourself, but also then towards other people. And I mean, trust me, I had to spend many years in therapy and my own healing to learn this, right?
Absolutely.
It's such a struggle every single time, because the mind wants to continue to replay what it knows in the past. But it's also very possible to develop a new perspective around it that's actually healthier for you.
Yes, totally. And I think especially what you say about it does not mean that you actually condone the behavior. I think those were the two, I guess, greatest healing points for me. It's just the realization that forgiving someone does not mean that you're also kind of condoning the behavior. I think that's the other thing, Libra that I am, fairness, justice.
Right.
They wronged me, so there should be a consequence. That took me a while to let go of as well. So definitely, and I think the other thing as well is realizing that forgiveness is not about the other person. It is about you. You can be here, bitter and hanging on to someone, and they could be having the time of their lives, out having different experiences, making new friends. They're probably growing. They might not even be the same person that hurt you before, but you stay stuck because, like you said, you continue replaying that. I think maybe the sooner that we can all maybe realize that forgiveness is actually, mainly about us. And not even just, the spiritual sense, but actually when you look into it more and realize it just emotionally, mentally, the benefits health-wise that it even has on us,
Yeah. I'm so visual, and one thing that I don't remember where I might have read this, the essence of what I read, what stuck with me is that when you stay invested in replaying those scenarios, right, and kind of rehashing what happened in your own mind, right? So you're not even being productive with it. You're not having a conversation with the person to try to, you're actually just stewing in your own mind. You are energetically tied to that individual. And if you think about yourself as energy, and if you have these ties, like these little cords coming up from people in your life, right? The ones that you love, the ones, your friends, your family members, your neighbors, whoever it is, if someone has wronged you, that tendency to think like, I don't want that energy around me tends to be very common, right? Like, I don't want that because they hurt me.
Yes.
But then you need to act in accordance with it to clean up the energy around it, right? And that whenever you start to perseverate on what happened, you are strengthening that energetic tie to what happened that you didn't want to happen. And
absolutely.
So the sooner that you can clear yourself energetically from that, the better off you'll be in terms of then turning that energy back towards yourself to heal.
Yes.
And then getting to that point where you can create a story about it that actually empowers you to the next chapter. And empowerment doesn't happen through demonization of anybody, right? By being able to say, it's gone, it's, I understand to the degree that I can, but I'm not holding on to anything that is not in service of my highest good.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. You just, that's the full stop. I have nothing more to add. That was perfect.
I love that. Full stop.
Yeah, full stop. There's nothing more to say. I think, no, literally, I that's literally it, isn't it? It's the clearing of the energy. It's realizing, like you said, that tie, and why would you want to hold yourself to why would you want to hold yourself to something that negative, something that hurts every time you replay it, that actually, because it's in the past, it's almost like a dead thing. Like you said, it's about using your mind productively, because we all know, as a man thinketh, so is he. That the mind, when used productively, can be so powerful in terms of manifesting and building. Exactly. And yeah, just like you said about personal development, just realizing all of those things. That's kind of the sooner, I think, also that you realize, what, I don't need to be tied to the past. I need to just, as much as possible, use as much of my energy to kind of charge forward, and whatever it is I see, as being my vision or my purpose.
Yeah. And one thing that I've observed where we struggle so much with it, because right now we can talk about it, right? And people might be listening and being like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But then when it comes to putting it into practice, It's like, dang it, what do they say? Because it goes right up.
Especially when all the emotions are charging through you as well, right? Yeah.
Completely. It's interesting for me that in my observations of what I've seen with either past clients or different situations, and a lot with my own self,
sure,
is that when we are that hurt, where we feel like we can't let go, there is a part of us that definitely has not healed, that it usually is not around the current situation, right?
So true.
It's flared up something in us.
Yes.
It's an old wound, we call it. Right.
Agreed.
And the old wound has been covered up with gross band-aids after band-aid after band-aid. And now they've all been ripped off. And we might not be conscious of it in our minds that the reason we are struggling so much to let go and forgive is because of this old wound that happened when you were, in seventh grade.
Right.
But it comes back up. And this is why self-awareness is so important, is that not aware of yourself and where you're feeling these emotions from and what they might be connected to in your life, you're going to miss these opportunities in the present moment to be able to move through hardship with a little bit more ease. But if you can take time to be curious about your experience, I'm hurting, or I can't possibly think about forgiving them. Okay, why is that? Right? Like that acceptance is, I'm not ready to forgive. Okay, I'm not ready to forgive. Now, how do I start to understand that? What's out for me? Does this remind me of a past time where I felt wronged? Is there a memory that I have where I felt like I wasn't seen or heard in? And that exploration can allow you to get insights that can then help you address not only the current situation, but also the past that you might not have been properly.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard you say throughout this conversation, self-awareness, becoming self-aware. I think, as we're going through whatever the process is, whether it's, whatever stage, whether it's the goodbye itself or forgiveness, gratitude. I mean, I think you've also mentioned a few things as well, like maybe seeing a therapist, journaling. How else would you kind of recommend that people become, kind of develop that self-awareness? Because I find with some people that there are some people that actually don't always want to be self-aware because it hurts too much and they're not quite ready to go to that space. So I mean, how do we develop that, especially if we tend to be those sort of people who maybe tend to shy away from it a bit more?
Most people are uncomfortable sitting with their own selves, right?
Yes.
So first of all, it's very normal to feel like, I don't want to look at my stuff, right? Because our stuff is messy. And when we have that reaction, it's actually a very healthy reaction of our bodies trying to regulate any potential stress that might come up. So one way that I have helped people, I actually have a client right now that I've been working with. She's a mentoring client of mine. We've been looking at 3 areas of her life that she wanted mentoring support around. And it was her purpose, more like what's her career purpose. She's felt isolated in her work. She's a mom and she's a freelance freelancer, so she's doesn't really have a community of people that she goes to work to every day.
Right.
And it's been very hard for her to make decisions. So she has brilliant ideas about what she wants to do professionally. She's actually very good at what she currently does, but she has a very hard time making any decisions. And so our work together has been focused on those 3 bucket areas. And what I have worked with her to do, and what I would recommend for people that understand what self-awareness is, but the thought of it makes them uncomfortable, or they don't want to go to therapy, or they feel like they don't have the means to invest that level of work.
Sure.
It starts with for me, the one good place to start is body awareness. So when you start with noticing how your body responds every day, just out of curiosity, like you could even set a timer on your clock, right? Like once every hour, how does your body feel right now? Right? Do you feel tension anywhere? Where in your body do you feel tension? You know, like right now, my hips are super tight because I haven't been exercising, and I've been sitting in my chair hunched over. So, okay, my back feels a little kinky. My hips feel tight. I have some knots in my left shoulder. My neck doesn't feel very relaxed. That's self-awareness. Right? So if you start with your body and just paying attention to your physical sensations, that can help you start to tap into your own self in a way that doesn't feel threatening, right? So, I mean, what's going to be threatening is like, tell me how you feel about your childhood memories around X, right? No one wants to hear, right?
Yeah, no, totally.
Right? But if you ask them, okay, like, how does your belly feel right now? Does your belly feel tight or soft? Does it feel full or empty? People can do that, right? It feels safe enough. And then from there, when you get into the regular practice of being able to notice how your body feels, and by the way, a lot of people will find that that exercise in itself is challenging, because we're not used to paying attention to our own bodies or ourselves. So it's going to take practice to notice just your body awareness. From there, you can expand that into then mind awareness, right? So what thoughts are you having right now? If your stomach starts cramping, what's going on in your mind? And then from there, you can expand it further. How am I feeling? And when feeling, I always go to my heart. You know, what emotions am I feeling right now? Am I feeling any kind of emotions that I can grasp onto that feel connected to these thoughts, to then this body sensation that I have? The more you practice that, the easier it will be for you in moments of despair to tune in, because now you've practiced it. Okay, how am I feeling physically? There's that sensation. That sensation reminds me that I start to have these kinds of thoughts, which then trigger these kinds of emotions. And then when it happens, you can step in to start to what we call regulate it. Right? You're regulating your stress response, and your stress response happens physiologically, emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. You can get in there to start to nurture yourself in a way where you're paying attention to all those manifestations that happen in response to life. And I'm just such a big believer that the best way to do this is to start when things are fabulous in your life. Don't start when things are falling apart.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And it's sadly it's not the sexy work that people want to do. You know, people don't want to invest in self-awareness if they can invest in finding, you know, how to grow your business to 6 figures this week. Right. And that's been a struggle, you know, is that I'm a big proponent of teaching the unsexy stuff. It's so necessary. It's just so necessary.
Yeah, it's funny because I was actually speaking to, you know, Kathy Hahn a bit earlier, and we were talking about, you know, when growing your business, or, you know, trying to develop as a person, you are never actually going to go past, you know, kind of where you are, you know, personally. So obviously the higher you invest in yourself, you know, your learning, your emotions, all of those sort of things, actually the higher you will then go with your, you know, your business, your relationships, and all the sexy stuff, you know. So what you're saying is definitely, you know, the foundation for it all. It's funny, I don't know what I'm like you, where I will read stuff and completely forget where it came from. But it actually just reminded me of, I think it was a Medium article, one of those, sometimes you get those emails that kind of say, oh, have a look at this article. And it was talking about the fact that we have kind of developed as humans to go towards the things that are more gratifying first. So I don't know, we might be on a diet, but that chocolate bar is there, and we think about that, the fact that we want the chocolate bar rather than actually I shouldn't eat that, in order to get the results that I want first. And I think that's what you're kind of talking about, the sexy stuff versus the unsexy stuff of the business, the relationships, the cars, the house, but actually it's on this side. You need to take care of this first.
Yep, totally. That's got to make self-awareness the irresistible chocolate bar.
Yeah. Maybe it's just we need to just package it differently somehow.
Totally.
Find a way.
Once you figure that out, my problems are solved, right?
I'm thinking you could maybe call it the Snickers of self-development or something like. I think I'd go for that.
You just called my favorite chocolate bar. Yeah, you're onto something.
There we go. Oh, I love it. So what does the future hold now in terms of, bridging? You talked about a bit about bridging consciousness and the good goodbye. What else is there kind of on the horizon for you?
Yeah, so it's exciting of a time for me, and you've gotten a sense of this, but for your audience, being somebody, I'm a Capricorn, and being somebody who is I'm not a recovering perfectionist. I own my perfectionism, but
I say that about my control freakness.
Very aware of how my perfectionism can help or hinder me. I've come down a life path where I have very much wanted to know everything that's coming ahead, right? And you've gotten snippets of it through what we've talked about today. And these past handful of years, I've really I've been taught some tough lessons by the universe on really trusting divine timing and being able to also be open to the co-creation that can happen with God, universe, spirit, whatever you choose to believe in, by surrendering.
Yes.
So in terms of what's coming next, I'm sharing that with you to say that there's a big part of what's coming next that I have no idea about. Sure. And I'm very intentional in not knowing. In addition to that, because I'm a human and I have a brain that needs to be planning and doing something. What I'm really excited about is, continuing to bring the good goodbye message out to the world. And I had such beautiful energy and momentum and just community of supporters around it that have given me so many just inspired moments and energy to just keep bringing the message out. And then bringing the approach itself to different platforms. So one area that I'm very passionate about with the Good Goodbye is actually bringing that approach into organizational settings that are going through layoffs, acquisitions, or closures. I think that we do a very poor service to people when we're laying them off or firing them. And there's a lot of emotional damage that gets done. So I would love to bring the Good Goodbye approach to HR executives, to leaders of organizations, to rethink how they lay people off and let this be a tool that they give people as they're transitioning out of organizations. And then also, apply the Good Goodbye approach to people going through breakups. Area that we struggle a lot, and we don't think about going to take a course around self-awareness and going through a breakup. We want to know how to get sexy again, get back out there and find that guy and start really jealous, right? So again, I'm not doing the sexy work, but it's going to help you be more sexy. I would love to start offering courses to people, so that people can take them anywhere in the world, but they're able to get access to my expertise that I bring to the lessons that I've been teaching and my guidance and support, so that they feel like they actually have a chance of being able to move through change and loss differently.
Yes.
and then, being able to speak about it. Public speaking's one of my biggest passions. So I've started to do a little bit of speaking around the good goodbye, which has been phenomenal, and continue to do that to just spread the word. And with Bridging Consciousness, that's all of this feeds into that, because I really want the people that gravitate towards my message and gravitate towards me in terms of what I'm bringing as a leader, that feel that they can learn from me in terms of my mentorship. These are the people, the shining stars, that I can't wait to start to mentor and then just really help elevate their message. And it's kind of, I just feel like all these connecting lights of and really amplified up to just do the healing work that we need to do, because it's time. It's our lifetime that we are making some major shifts in terms of humanity and the trajectory that we're heading towards in the future.
Totally. So for the person watching who's maybe experiencing loss in some way at the moment, whether it's, I don't know, a divorce, a death that they've experienced within family, friends, whatever the case may be, what would be your kind of parting words for them? What would you like to leave them with?
Yeah, I'd actually love to leave them with something tangible. So if anybody is in a situation like that, and you feel that you are open to a new way of creating a goodbye that actually helps elevate you into a next chapter in a very transformative, empowered way, I've created a 30-page blueprint workbook. So it's the Good Goodbye Blueprint, and it's your roadmap to thriving after a change or loss, and it's free for people. So people can go to my website and download it immediately. And that's because I am so practical and very much, systemic. I want to give people a system to be able to work through a change or loss. And this is a great way to just start to get your feet wet and understanding how to rewrite your goodbye story, so that you don't get stuck on one end of the spectrum.
Absolutely.
And that would be my message too, is that, there's good in every moment of life, but in those moments of pain, that is actually where you get some of the biggest blessings if you're open to them.
Definitely.
So it starts with changing how we view change and loss, and from there being able to really find our way of moving through it in a way that just helps us thrive.
Yes, I can definitely say, from, like I said, just having read the book, that was definitely something I experienced. I loved, I remember saying to you, I really loved what you said about, the idea of rituals, and actually formalizing, saying goodbye. Because I think I've always been like a huge journaler, so I would always kind of write, my little letters to people, or just, let the feelings out. But it was interesting reading about how actually that can be taken a step further, to maybe actually, just turn it into, I don't know, even like a little bit of a ceremony, or just something tangible, so that you can literally, like you talked about earlier, get rid of some of that energy, or just draw that line in the sand of, that goodbye situation.
Yep, absolutely. I'm very grateful for the healers that I've had in my life, that have taught me about ritual, and even the training that I did as a clinical psychologist, where we ritualize saying goodbye to our clients at the end of the session. That really woke me up to just how powerful ritual can be. And it can be as simple as lighting a candle, writing a journal entry, to as big as, bringing in a ceremony where you have witnesses. It's really up for you to create something that feels right for you. And so my contribution to that is the book, obviously, and the workbook itself gives a few ideas on different rituals you can do that have been valuable for me, that I hope be value to other people as well.
Amazing. And please just remind people where they can find you as well. Any social media handles, your website, all of that stuff.
Yeah, so my website is www.drgladysato.com, and that's spelled DRGLADYSATO. It's a handful. And on Instagram, same thing, dr.gladys.ato, Facebook, Gladys Ato. So you can, ATO is the last name, just remember that. And the book is on Amazon, so you can look up Gladys Ato, The Good Goodbye, and you'll find my book there as well.
Perfect. Oh, Gladys, thank you so much for, just this chat, sharing your wisdom. But also, I wanted to take the time also just to thank you for your continuous support of me. Honestly, like you have become such a valuable friend in the last few months. I just so appreciate you, honestly.
Oh, I feel the same way about you. I just,
Oh.
you are phenomenal. And to see you, I just want to see you, seriously. And you're all the way on the other side of the world.
Honestly, one day this will not be virtual. We will get to
Oh,
do a real.
oh my God, we have to see each other one day for sure. Yeah.
Honestly.
You're doing beautiful work, and I applaud everything that you're doing. That
Thank
your
you.
voice is needed in this world, and the people that you are serving are so blessed to have you.
Thank you. Same to you. Same to you. Seriously. Ah, goodbye, my
Oh,
friend.
my sweetie, thank you.
Thank you. How amazing was that interview? Now, if you were just as blown away as I was by all of Gladys's wisdom and pearls and gems that she shared, then definitely feel free to like and also to share this video with someone else who you know needs to hear this, like will kind of speak into their situation and what they might be going through as well. I would also love to hear, what were your top takeaways? So definitely also feel free to write those in the comments. Let's keep this dialogue and conversation going. I'm very interactive, so feel free. I will respond back. And the other thing also is if you would like to see more of these sorts of interviews where I speak to experts and industry leaders about things that concern us as women of God, but also you maybe want to know more about how you can actually know your worth, your power and your purpose as a woman of God so you can speak up, step out and shine, then definitely consider subscribing. And don't forget also to hit the bell because that will notify you whenever I upload a new video, which pretty much tends to be about twice a week, okay? At least once, but usually twice, yeah? So until next time, I'm going to say take care, my love, and we will speak again soon. Bye.